reports have been progressing on the Minnesota Vikings search for a running back, as a new report has linked Najee Harris to the Minnesota Vikings and Aaron Jones potentially going to a rival in the NFC North. We're going to be talking about all of this and what the Vikings could look like at running back next season. Now, before we get into this video, though, we're on the road to 1K, and we notice that just over 90% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your Minnesota Vikings news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join us here on the channel. We're covering everything Minnesota Vikings this offseason, and we have a lot to cover, and you will not want to miss all of the exciting news that we have to bring you. Without any further ado, let's get into our first quote here. Coming with a little interesting quote, I guess, on Najee Harris from Chris Knox is, "A fresh start and a foray into unrestricted free agency could be the best for Najee Harris. He's a capable dual-threat back, will turn 27 in March, and should receive a starter-level contract offers from running back needy teams. Harris would be a sensible target for the Vikings if they don't retain Aaron Jones. Minnesota is expected to turn the offense over to JJ McCarthy in 2025, and the young signal caller would benefit from having a high-volume back in the fold." And now, immediately when you see this, we immediately think back to JJ McCarthy's time with Michigan, and we saw how heavy he was on his running backs, and that's where kind of a lot of people are underestimating him, saying he's a running back heavy quarterback. You know, he don't throw the ball, he only hands it off, but we know JJ McCarthy has something special that the Vikings are waiting on. But regardless, a running back is going to be in the cards for the Minnesota Vikings regardless. And even though Aaron Jones had a great season this year at a very good price and said he would love to end his career in Minnesota, many teams are going to be looking at him as he is the top free agent on the running back side of things in this offseason. And Najee Harris, a lot of teams may be straying away from him depending on how he's done in, Pittsburgh and the uncertainty of what he's been able to do. And Griffen, we know that the Vikings are going to love their running back regardless of who it is, whoever it may be, and whoever it has been in the past. And this is going to be a very interesting search for Kevin O'Connell here in this offseason, as well as Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So when we're looking at this, we have a lot to think about and a lot to kind of put into perspective about how the Vikings season is going to, I guess, translate next season. So what do you think that we're going to look like? Do you think that we're going to see something completely different? Do you think we're going to see or a familiar type of thing, I guess?
I think Pittsburgh could be somebody that we're answering a lot of phone calls from this offseason, because we're going to be talking about them again in another video later on in regards to something that they might be doing. But as regards to Najee Harris, I would love it if he came to Minnesota. I know there's a lot of things that people have as far as critiques on him, but he still has 1,000 yards in every single season he's played. Yeah, he doesn't have the best vision or awareness when it comes to picking the right gap and exploding through those, or just not breaking tackles. But when he's clicking and he has an open lane, he is clicking. And he is a very much like an Aaron Jones type back where, yeah, he's running and he can do decent on the reception end of things. He hasn't been as heavy as far as the pass catching game in the past few seasons, but you can still utilize him in that sense, and he still has that explosive speed once he gets to the second level. It's very hard to tackle him. So I do love the idea of them bringing him in here, and I know that there's a lot of running back talk that we've had for this upcoming season, whether it's guys that we're looking at in the draft, in free agency, or just Aaron Jones alone. There's been a lot of running back talk for this Vikings team. It's very exciting to be covering a lot of it because a lot of these possibilities I'm very excited for. So it's going to be very exciting to see whoever Minnesota gets as their RB1 next season.
Yeah, and the search is going to be very intense for the Vikings on this front. And although I don't want to count out the draft, I think it's very unlikely the Vikings do go somewhere in the running back side of things high in the draft. We've mentioned Cam Scatabo, a guy that I think is going to be a very sneaky pick wherever he may go, and that could be one the Vikings consider, but I think the highest and most likely option for the Vikings is the route of free agency and going someone younger there in Najee Harris. And as you mentioned, Najee Harris, pretty similar to Aaron Jones in that front, is a dual threat, 27 years old. He could be, and I don't want to say for sure, but he certainly could be that future running back for the Vikings that they've been looking for, and one that could stick around for quite some time to be paired kind of with JJ McCarthy. We know that he takes a very, very heavy toll for his game with the Steelers, and that certainly is not going to stop wherever he does go, because the potential that he has, I feel like still hasn't even been seen in the NFL yet, and he's still waiting to kind of just have that breakout, even though he's been in the league a few years already. And his projected market value is not that high at all, at $9.2 million annually, though that may be a bit low given the limited running back market this year. A 3-year, $30 million deal should be a reasonable target for Harris's camp, and I see no way the Vikings don't even just try and at least look at this for certain. This is something, and this is a running back that I see in a Vikings uniform. He just seems like that Vikings running back that we haven't had in a while, but we also have to think about him potentially being that number one by a landslide, with Cam Akers also being a free agent here with Aaron Jones. And Ty Chandler, a guy that got some options here, could be a good 1-2 punch, or whether they do go the draft route as well. There's certainly a few things that they could do with Naji, with Ty Chandler, and especially with JJ McCarthy, the way they kind of want to do. And I'm very excited to see how this does progress because, Aaron Jones definitely getting older. I was a victim of also saying that he was injury prone beginning of the season, although played his first full season, or second full season, I should say, in quite some time. He is certainly getting older, and, that's a big part of the plan going forward as well. But when you look at Najee Harris, I just see the word consistency. I don't see much else. I just see a very solid running back who this season seemed to have a bit of a bigger boost than last year, although still splitting time with Jalen Moore. But consistent is one thing that I will not hesitate to call him, and I think that's something the Vikings certainly need with this team. So, Griffen, how important do you think this consistency would be for the Vikings? I know that Aaron Jones certainly had the full season this year, but we've seen what the injuries on the running back side of thing for the Vikings could do to a full season, and how it could just derail the entire team.
Yeah, I think consistency is one of the things that Minnesota has been lacking the most, whether it's winning games over the course of a regular season or winning important games or having a running back that you can trust every single week, week in and week out. I know Aaron Jones was killing it this year, but there was a handful of weeks there, especially in the later half of the season, where he got stymied by a lot of teams. Najee Harris, the only thing I worry about with him is I don't know if you can trust him with 20 carries a game. Without having a supporting cast around him, you're going to have to lunge him into that set almost. So you want to go out and get a guy or draft a guy that you can pair with him as well, where we've seen with the Lions, they're having a lot of success with the Gibbs and Montgomery style of running back, where you have speed and you have power. Minnesota needs to shift their focus to that, especially when you're going to be playing a team like the Lions twice a year. You want to make sure that you have weapons very similar to them, and there's going to be another NFC North team that's going to try and get weapons like that as well.
Yeah, and what you said there about another NFC North team is certainly something that the Vikings are going to have to keep in mind. But I do like the 1-2 punch idea. I think that if Najee Harris or even Aaron Jones are the ones that kind of squeeze into this way, are certainly the ones that are going to need to match with those other teams. They're going to need to keep up these teams by doing the exact same thing. We've seen it works if you have the right combination, and I think Najee Harris is absolutely one part of that combination that any team could use for a 1-2 punch. But another team in the market for Aaron Jones is actually the Bears. The Chicago Bears' new Ben Johnson coach certainly seems to be building this team up from what it is and what it was. Returning to Minnesota on a 3-year deal, a $21 million deal, would make plenty of sense for Aaron Jones. He proved to be a strong fit for Kevin O'Connell's offense and could play a big role in helping the Vikings transition to McCarthy at quarterback. Jones would be a terrific fit for the Steelers if they don't retain Harris. The Bears could lurk as a sleeper destination, and new Bears head coach Ben Johnson knows exactly what Jones can offer after repeatedly facing him as the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator. Johnson could also be interested in pairing DeAndre Swift with a back like Aaron Jones to form a talented duo like the one he had with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Now, it seems like Ben Johnson is kind of spreading this idea around the NFL, and that's where the Vikings come into play as well now. If you see the Lions do it, you see the Bears try to go out and get Swift and Johnson and Aaron Jones, I do think it is time that you need to get this duo ready, especially with JJ McCarthy in his first year. And we've spoken about Aaron Jones here, absolutely not mind having him back for the season, but a 3-year deal and $21 million is certainly something that I think the Vikings would want to think about because of the term. Price is fine, but Aaron Jones getting older, the injuries have been an issue in the past, and as you mentioned, especially in the later half of the season, didn't miss any time, but still, that's something that I think the Vikings certainly need to think about as they go forward with this running back search.
Yeah, I think the thing with Aaron Jones is too with the age where he signed to a 3-year deal. That's great. You got him for 3 years. Then he's 33. And then you're going into a running back market where, yeah, you got the draft as well there with younger guys. But by the time it gets to that point, we've seen what happened with the quarterback market over the past few seasons and how out of control and bananas it's gotten, where quarterbacks that are getting paid exactly what they're not worth. We saw with Deshaun Watson, he kind of wrecked it all. It almost really started with Kirk Cousins in a sense with that first Minnesota contract. So it's kind of Minnesota's fault that that's happened as far as quarterbacks are concerned. But now we're going to start to see it in the running back game where, especially after the season we've seen where so many running backs exploded this season and are going to be deserving and worthy of massive contracts, and they're going to be demanding them, knocking on teams' doors. And now, especially when you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley, where if a team thinks a certain running back is expendable, that running back's going to have a chip on their shoulder, go to the other team and make them regret ever getting rid of them and go on and probably win a Super Bowl, because we're seeing that exactly happen this season. So Minnesota, if you're going to do that and he's going to go to a team that you play twice a season and having a tandem that already is like Gibbs and Montgomery, where now you have Swift and Jones to worry about, Minnesota is going to be outgunned in almost in 4 games a season just alone on that, because they won't have that 1-2 punch that those teams will have. So going out and making sure you have that, whether it's Najee Harris and Cam Scatterbo, or Ashton Jeanty and Aaron Jones, or Caleb Johnson and Aaron Jones, or whatever, you make sure that you have that 1-2 punch, especially when you have a quarterback who's so dependent on running backs, whether in the passing game or just taking the pressure off them in the running game. You got to make sure that you're doing that for your run game and for your quarterback.
Yeah, and with what we've seen from the Vikings playing against that this season, we know that it's not easy to stop. And if you have two elite running backs, just for example, it would also be DeAndre Swift and Aaron Jones, or if it's Gibbs and Montgomery, that is a very, very tough way to stop, because your mindset is trying to focus on one and then immediately get switched over to the other. And it could be a very useful tool, especially with J.J. McCarthy here in this upcoming season. But while the Vikings need to get younger at running back, re-signing Jones to a team-friendly rate around $7 million per season and doubling down at the position in one of the next 2 drafts will make a ton of sense as well for the team moving forward. So kind of touching on what we just said as well, whether they choose to go young free agency, young draft, and keep Aaron Jones, give him kind of that, sit behind and watch, but also get a big part of the team, could be the right move for the Vikings as well. So, kind of going back to the beginning of the video as well, it's going to be a lot of thinking for Kwesi and for Kevin O'Connell to think about what they want to do, and how kind of J.J. McCarthy is going to fill into this as well. You never really know. Maybe they want J.J. McCarthy throwing the ball more because no teams have really seen him throw too much. You don't have too much film on that, but I do think the running back, regardless of who it may be, is the smarter idea. And one factor working against Jones staying in Minnesota might be because he's the best best running back in free agency available. Teams like the Bears, Steelers, or even the Raiders could potentially outbid the Vikings for his services should he get the chance to test the open market. And this kind of goes back as well to the video we posted yesterday, going back into, the Vikings' plan for where they're going to spend their money. And we know the running back is a big part as well. The secondary has been a big issue with the salary, I guess, going forward due to the free agency. So they're going to have to really make sure they're spending in the right areas. But we know that whether it be Aaron Jones, whether it be Najee Harris, I think those 2 contracts could be and seem to be the safest option for the Vikings, or whether it be, of course, the draft. With Aaron Jones being the most expensive, the Vikings have a lot of kind of leeway to think what they want to do. And, of course, we know Aaron Jones has passed with the Vikings, with the Green Bay Packers. Another one, I wouldn't say as consistent as Najee Harris, but when healthy, when feeling good, when at the top of his game, he's elite. And we know that's possible regardless of age. And even aging up this year certainly has been a very good running back. So, Griffen, I want to know, this is a bit of a different thing here, but who is your favorite of these 2? Do you think Aaron Jones? Do you think Najee Harris? I think both have their separate positives, separate negatives, but may not be both. It might not be any of them. It could be a whole different route, but of the 2 in this video, what kind of way are you leaning?
This one hurts because it's going to be a very conflicting answer, because I think Aaron Jones is the better running back overall. I think when he's healthy and he's fully ready to go, he is an unstoppable powerhouse. Najee Harris, we've seen his floor and we've seen his ceiling. His floor is relatively low when he is stymied. He has put up some very poor fantasy numbers when he is stymied. So in that sense, I do prefer Aaron Jones as an overall running back. However, the age and the system definitely play into that. I think Pittsburgh is also a very bad offensive scheme for Najee Harris to be in. I think that's an offense where it doesn't matter who you have there. That offense is just going to be dysfunctional as all hell no matter what. So if you bring him into an offense that is very run-oriented and very friendly towards him and a quarterback that relies on him, I think we could see a very different Najee Harris than we've seen in the seasons in Pittsburgh. And to match with that consistency, you turn those just barely 1,000-yard seasons into 1,100-yard seasons, 1,200-yard seasons. You reach 10 touchdowns maybe. I think that's something that's very likely, where his ceiling is a lot higher with Minnesota, I think, than Aaron Jones is. But however, on just skill base alone, I do think Aaron Jones is the better running back based on what we've seen over the years.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. You pretty much touch on every point I was thinking as well. And, as you mentioned, the 1,200 yards could be something that just kind of boost him that much more. And looking at the Vikings, the way they play for really any running back, but especially Najee Harris, I think there's no way that he wouldn't be interested in it, at least. Just something thrown out there certainly has to kind of pique some interest in Najee Harris with the Minnesota Vikings. But that's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a like, hit the sub button as well, and let us know in the comments below. Who do you want? Of these two, could be anybody else, but of these two, who do you think is the more likely or even better option for the Minnesota Vikings at this very moment in the offseason? But like I said, that's all we got. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. But we're signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.